Hello, everybody. Welcome to the mostly virtual 2020 Portland Film Festival. I want to remind everybody who's watching, I don't know which of the ways that you found us for this, but if you are live, you can either watch on the Portland Film Festival website, portlandfilmfestival.com, or you can search on YouTube for Portland Film Festival Carrie Preston. Or if you have the coolest way, if you have Comcast, you can literally pick up your Comcast remote and press the microphone button and say Portland Film Festival, and it will take you to this conversation. Indeed, you can do that for the whole rest of the day, today and also tomorrow as the festival continues, and you can see what's going live at the festival. You guys know probably by now that my name is Michael Dunaway, and I'm a filmmaker, and I am the editor-at-large of Paste Magazine, and I'm a former creative director for Portland Film Festival and Sarasota Film Festival. And so I'm doing some consulting and some hosting for Portland this year. And of all the things that I'm doing this week, this is the one thing that I've been looking forward to the most. The great Carrie Preston, Emmy winner Carrie Preston, is one of my oldest friends. She's been one of my nearest and dearest for nearly 40 years now, since she was about 3, you know. Carrie, of course, is maybe best known to casual fans from her Emmy-winning, twice Emmy-nominated and one Emmy-winning role on The Good Wife. Is also very familiar from shows from True Blood to Lost to now Claws. Very familiar to fans of the New York stage and many films, and she's a director herself, Sundance director, and just the greatest actor that I know. And to let you know just how much I believe that, some of you know that I'm fortunate to have gotten to know a lot of great actors, and I'm very blessed in more ways than one that Mark Ruffalo is a friend of mine. And we were at a party that I was throwing, and they both were there. And Carrie walked up. I was talking to Mark, and Carrie was walking close by. And I said, Mark, you know how much your work means to me, but I'm about to introduce you to the best actor I know. And his eyes got wide, and he says, well, I have to meet this person. And I turned around, and it was Carrie, and so I introduced him.
That's
great honors of my life.
Well, you know, we did do high school plays together, and I think, you're a little bit biased.
Well, what I always say about Carrie, and then we can just talk, but I want to say one more thing, because it's what I always say about Carrie is that, as she says, I've been seeing her performances on stage and on screen for almost 40 years, and what I always say is that her performances, this is the most striking thing about Carrie. It's not only the heights that she reaches at her best, but I always say that her performances, and I've seen tons of them over the years, range from an A+ all the way down to an A. That's the range of her performances. I've never seen her deliver under an A performance. So her sheer consistency of excellence is it's so inspiring, and she's always been so dear to me as a friend, and I've always been so inspired by her as an artist. I'm really excited about getting some time to really dig into some good life stuff and career stuff for those of you who are big fans of hers, because I know there are many. So, Miss Carrie Preston, Miss Carrie Bird.
Yeah.
I have a question that I love starting out interviews with, because it's deceptively simple, but it's never been more appropriate than in this interview right here. Carrie Preston, where are you from?
I am from Macon, Georgia. The great Macon, Georgia. Yeah, Michael and I go back, I guess middle school really is where we first got to be friends. And then, we went separate ways. I'm from high school, but then I was back in Macon one summer between
Evansville and Juilliard, right?
Yeah, between college and grad school, which was college being, I was one of those lifers with school. Like I just felt, I just loved school. So I went to all these, I started off at the College of Charleston, Then I went to the University of Evansville in Indiana and got my theater degree there. And then I had this little moment where I was auditioning for grad schools, and then I got into Juilliard. But I had this like little time between going to Juilliard, and I moved back to Macon and lived there for about 6 months. And then Michael and I hooked back up as friends then and started doing like plays and, you know, getting creative together, which was really great to, you know, have those bonds that were, you know, started off when we were so young, and then, you know, to hook up as adults, you know, who had a passion for the arts, and to, you know, sort of bring our collective experience together and make things was really a special time.
It really was. It really was. I mean, it's when we moved from being, you know, somebody I knew friends to like one of my people friends, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Never really taken a breather since then. It's been incredible. But tell me about for you know, the 99.999% of the people out there watching live and or watching later on the taped version who did not grow up in Macon. Why don't you characterize a little bit what it was like as someone who was an artist to grow up in Macon, and, you know, for you specifically growing up as the daughter of an artist as well. I mean, that's an interesting little twist, and you know, I got to give Miss Pam, that I love so much, a little shout out here. So why don't we talk a little bit about family and Macon and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I'm the daughter of Pam Preston, which you know, you couldn't have picked a better mother, you know, to have, because she taught me a lot about passion, you know, and about not being afraid of going for your dream, you know. She, you know, had been in Macon her whole life, and she is an artist, a visual artist, and she went away to college and was studying that. But then, you know, at that time, women would, you know, get married and have kids like really quickly, and so she started doing that, and then ended up taking her art and doing it in Macon. And so I got to watch somebody who was, you know, actualizing themselves as an artist, and encouraging myself and my brother, who's also an actor,
an incredible
actor, to you know, to do our art. And you know, I'll never forget when I was young, maybe 12 or 13 years old, and I was doing plays, and I had just been bitten by the bug. You know, I was like, oh, I'm a lifer, you know. I would sit in the wings and memorize all the lines to all the plays, all the characters. Whenever anyone was sick, I would jump in. Like, I can do it. I was like Bottom in Midsummer Night's Dream or something. I can play that part. And because I just loved it so much. And then, so I said to my mom one time, do you think that I could do this as a job, you know, as a living, you know, could I have a career as an actor? And she said, honey, somebody's got to do it. I don't know why it can't be you. And so that was definitely something that a lot of other people around me who were acting or being musicians or dancers or whatever, they were being discouraged, you know, or they were being told, like, you know, you should go get a real job first, and then you can maybe do this as a hobby. She never said that, you know. It just never crossed her mind to try to force me into something that didn't fit. And same is true for my brother, and our father was the same. He's passed away now, but he was always very, very supportive of us and very proud of us, even though he didn't really understand, you know, the arts much. He was a big, you know, believer and supporter of his kids. So, but luckily there was community theater, you know, in Macon. There was community theater, and, you know, I started off doing plays at the Macon Little Theater, and then that's where I met our dear friend Jim Crisp, and he moved from there, and he started his own theater company downtown called Theater Macon, and I was doing plays with him. And, you know, fast forward, he was the minister at my at my wedding.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing, and I'm coming up to Jim for sure here because he's a real touchstone in both of our lives. And I think people will be interested to hear about how he shaped you as an actor. But
Yeah.
it's an interesting thing about Macon. I mean, in a lot of ways, I think Macon is a typical small Southern town with all the foibles and strengths of a small Southern town, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's also different. I mean, first of all, I think that anywhere within a couple of hours of Atlanta is different. Period. Just because there's a level of sophistication and worldliness that goes with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not throwing shade at small towns in Mississippi, but it's just different. It's just different.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I think Capricorn Records changed Macon a lot. I think Macon is a lot more arts friendly because of the Waldens and because of Capricorn.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But then in our own teenagehood and adulthood, I always say that I don't know how many small Southern towns of 100,000 have a serious theater as good as Theater Macon, and that's because of Jim Crisp. I mean, I would think it's probably zero. I haven't been to every small Southern town, but I can't imagine that there are many, if any, that have a talent like Jim doing serious theater, and it shows in all the serious actors that he's produced. Why don't you talk about Jim and how? And again, Macon Little Theater is a wonderful organization, and we love Sylvia, and we love everybody associated with Macon Little Theater. That's wonderful.
Of course, absolutely.
But sort of how Jim's stuff is different, and how Jim kind of shaped you as an artist.
Well, when you're a young person, and especially in a small Southern town, you're not. I wasn't in New York City. I wasn't surrounded by theater, on a grand scale. But I knew that I was drawn to it, and so to have somebody like Jim who saw something very raw in me and was able to nurture it and foster it, and also challenge me. Like he would talk to me like an adult artist, even though I was, 12 or 13, when I started doing stuff with him, or maybe 15, and nonetheless still a teen. And he trusted me. I would ask him questions. I would say, I know I'm supposed to be better. How do I do that? And he would help me, and he would give me things to work on. And he would encourage me to, look into programs to go and study acting after I left him. He saw a future for me that I wasn't sure I was allowed to have. And also he was doing serious theater. Like my favorite story about him is, he wanted to do Chekhov. Okay, this is not something that's normally done in community theater. And so he really wanted to do it. And then we have this thing called the Cherry Blossom Festival in Macon, Georgia. And he thought, maybe I can just sneak a Chekhov play in there. And so he talked them into letting him do the Cherry Orchard, but they hadn't quite read it, and they didn't quite realize that it was about a cherry orchard getting chopped down. But nonetheless, he got it in there. And not only did he get it in there, he set it in the antebellum South. And it was just a beautiful, I would do a production of that now set that way, he had vision. Yeah. And then later, as he keeps moving on, he will do crowd pleasers, but then he'll also do really challenging theater that, makes his audience think. So he knows how to balance it out in a way that I think is great and healthy for the community. And it's certainly healthy and exciting for the artists. And a lot of us have gone on to, do it, in some way, shape, or form.
Can you give us a reading of your most famous line from the Cherry Orchard? You don't have to. I'm joking.
Now, what was it? Now I feel so cold. Oh, oh, when I had this really high voice. I had a really high voice, and we have this video of it. We have a video of it. It still exists. When I was 17 years old, I'm playing this part. And my voice is so high, and it's so Southern. And then I talk about, I met a priest, and then I went up in a balloon.
Perfect.
So precious. Because 10 years later, my first equity gig
in Baltimore
was at Baltimore Center Stage playing that same part. And I'd already gone through actor training, and I'd gone through Juilliard and the whole thing. And I was like, I wonder what I was really like when I was 17. And Jim Chris was like, here, this is what you are like. He shows me that video. Precious.
That's amazing.
Boy. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, I love that you just hit on, like, I don't know if we've ever even talked about this, in these terms before, but you hit on exactly what I always say about Jim, which is that, Jim is a super talented director, full stop, period. He's a brilliant man. He's a wonderful man. But I think the thing that makes him so much different from anybody else is that he is who taught me to see myself as an artist. And it's exactly what you said is my experience as well, that he never talks down to you. He's never let me, the professional artist, teach you how one day you'll become an artist. It's let me, the slightly older artist, sit down with you, the slightly younger artist, and let's collaborate on this,
Yeah.
Which is just amazing. And especially in the case of acting, when you're going to be collaborating your whole life, And so to teach that process by example is just, he's just, Jim, I hope that you're watching, because Carrie and I could not love you any more than two people do.
Yeah.
And if anyone is ever within, even though Jim is the what do you call it? He's no longer the acting director of theater making.
Right.
I can't remember the academic term, but anyway, he's still quite an influence on that theater, and that theater continues to do just incredible work.
And he also was paramount in getting them helping to fundraise for, a $1 million endowment that will in perpetuity pay for an artistic director and a community theater. This is unheard of.
Yeah.
This is unheard of. So that theater will always have somebody in residence who's getting paid to run the theater. It's not a volunteer situation or a board run thing. Of course, all of those elements are there, but that's just that is so special for a community to have that. And I worry now with COVID, with the live theater being completely and utterly gone right now. It is nice to know that they have that in place, that they'll be able to lean on that and to get through this.
Hero. Jim Chris was a hero. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So do you want to talk about? Let's see. Why don't we skip over Evansville unless there's specific things you want to talk about, and let's do the Juilliard years, because I know that's the J word is such a big word in our industry, and it has such a mystique to it, and I feel like I'm trying my best not just to do things I want to talk to you about, and to think about what the audience is going to want to hear about. So I know that they're going to want to hear about what the experience was like going through Juilliard. Who you went to Juilliard with. Were you nervous when you first walked through those doors? All of that.
Yeah, well, first I'll say I wouldn't have gotten into Juilliard if it hadn't been for the University of Evansville, which is where I did my undergraduate work. I had started off at the College of Charleston, like I said, and there I met a professor named Scott Lank, and he was a graduate of Evansville, and so he said, I really want you to try to go get in this program, because you need a bigger program than what you can get here. And so he paid up for a plane ticket. I had never been on an airplane before. He paid for my plane ticket. He got me there. I auditioned for the then head chair of the department, John David Lutz. And after the audition, we were chatting, and he said, well, what other schools are you applying to? And I said, well, I really want to go to Juilliard. And he said, if you come to the University of Evansville, I will get you into Juilliard.
Wow.
Now that is a tall order, like to say that to a young, actor was pretty bold. And so I went there, and sure enough, the training there really just was the foundation upon which I built everything else. And they also set you up really well to audition for schools. And so, I auditioned for Juilliard. That was for the second time. And I got in. And when I got in, I called Lutz and said I got in. And he was like, oh, thank God. Oh, thank God. Because he had made this promise, He was like, oh, my God. And he's like, I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to make that promise again. Because they only take a few people, so it was, amazing that anybody gets in. So, yeah, there were when I was there, there were, in my class, there were 14 men and 7 women. At that point, they were really classical based. So, their theory was, okay, well, there aren't very many women's roles in classical theater. So we're going to, we're going to have more men than women. I think they've since wised up and realized women can also play men. So, but that was, before that, that was before there was a lot of pressure on diversity and all of that. So, it was an amazing experience. I kind of like whenever I meet somebody that is a graduate of Juilliard that I didn't know, at the time, I'll be like, oh my God, we were in Vietnam together. It was like, it was like we went through the wars, because it was a boot camp. I mean, for acting, it was really intense. It was wonderful, but you were with the same group of people, sun up to the next sundown to the next sun up. I mean, it was like nonstop. But it was great because it was like you were with your own repertory company for 4 years, and you got to do these incredible plays in these amazing facilities that, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find that in the real world, in the professional world.
In a city that can give you audiences that appreciate them too, in New York
City. Audiences always packed, because, the quality of everything there, music, dance, and theater is just unparalleled, and so we got spoiled a little bit too, because you would do these, but especially in the 4th year, you're doing these and you're wearing these amazing costumes and these incredible stage facilities, the sets, the whole thing. And then you get out and then you're, going to some shitty basement somewhere in some church, and you're like, oh, I'm so glad that I get to work and pay you to let me act. So
I don't mind costuming myself. It's great. I love that.
It's fine. I'll just haul my own. Yeah. So, so that was, that was great. And I certainly met people like my producing partner, James Vasquez. We were in class together as actors, and then we went on to, start a production company and make our own films. And, you meet these people that are kind of with you through the journey. And, some people go one way or the other, or, but, you always have that touchstone, the jail yard school is one of our nicknames for the Juilliard school.
The jail yard.
You were like in lockup. I know it sounds crazier than it was, but yeah, it was, I mean, I'll never forget, just the honor of walking in that building every day. And knowing the history of the people that, I was following. It's truly amazing.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. And then, it also, I mean, I think that I mentioned the audiences in New York City, but, I think just the physical proximity to being so close to all those great professional theaters. And
Yeah, and they were,
having,
we were,
and
yeah.
Juilliard having fed so many great actors in the past into those theaters, I think can't help but set you up for, you know, what you in fact did, which is you started getting great theater parts. Now, had you thought at that point, you know, were you agnostic as to film, television, stage theater? Did you think about yourself just primarily as a stage theater actor, or where was your mind during that time?
I mean, I almost dared not dream about the film and TV thing because it seemed so inaccessible. It seemed like something that I was scared to dream about because I wanted to do it so much. Like when I was a little tiny, like 6-year-old, I used to play in the front yard and I would pretend like there were cameras in the bushes and I would try to act natural. As if they were watching me. So something in me, well, got the concept of it, but we didn't really learn about film acting per se or on camera acting per se at Juilliard. I think they've since added that into the curriculum, but at the time it was definitely a classical based training. But of course, you know, the theory being, if you know how to work on a text, break down a text, understand why you're doing what you're doing, know how to play a scene, know how to get what you want, all of that stuff, then you can apply that to anything. And so it's just a matter of scale. And anybody who knows my work knows that I'm not afraid of scale. So I do bring, you know, my work is with my theater training to my film and TV work, because I don't know, I'm just not one of those actors that doesn't do. I don't know. I want to make big choices. I want to let big choices happen to me, because that's the kind of acting I like to watch. Yeah. You know, I'd like to watch the Allison Janney's of the world. I like to watch Meryl Streep's, the people who are, you know, transforming, who are not afraid to take themselves to uncharted territories. And I want to watch that. So that's, you know, what I want to try to do as an actor. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't have, you know, a solid training.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it's great now, though, that theater training programs see that in the time that I was being trained, there was still like a really healthy regional theater world, you know, where actors would go and they would move to a town and they would live there for years on end and do plays all the time. So I think the training programs were feeding actors into that. Yeah. And since that has really dwindled and we don't even really have any rep companies anymore, the training programs are, you know, realizing, okay, so we're going to, of course, train them to do theater. But we're also going to train them so that they can make a living.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So they can make a living, because it's hard to make a living on stage, especially if you don't do musicals, which I never really did much, you know, because I was not a very strong singer. I'm an actor who could sing, but that wasn't what I was doing. I was doing the straight stuff.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, speaking of regional theaters, and I'm going to interrupt myself for just a second because we're right at, or maybe just a little bit before, the halfway mark here, and I just want to, if anyone is watching live, I just want to remind you that you are able to ask questions. You can go to the YouTube site, or you can go to the Portland Film Festival site, or you can search on YouTube, and if you make comments there on either one of those, then Michael Kurtz, our fantastic tech guy extraordinaire, he's so much more than that, but that's his role that's relevant here, will get us those questions, and I'll be able to ask Carrie your questions rather than guessing at what you might want to hear. So speaking of those regional theaters, you know, we're going to get to your TV and film in a second, but I do, there's two things one thing about regional theater that I do want to bring up, which is, you know, that, you know, Alabama Shakespeare Festival was just such a big part of your brother's life and of your life, and I'd love for you to sort of tell the story about you and ASF.
Sure. Yeah.
And some pretty important things happened at ASF too. Some pretty important introductions.
Some pretty important things happened at Alabama Shakespeare Festival. I mean, my brother had been a resident actor there for quite some time already, and then when I got out of Juilliard, one of their shows that they were prepping for was Hamlet, and so John, my brother, said, "Why don't you audition for Ophelia, and then maybe you can come and do a show with me." I was like, "Great!" So I auditioned and got cast, and I went down there, and like I said, they had a rep company at the time.
By the way, let me just interrupt you for 1 second. For all you actors out there, you like how she just said one of the great regional theaters in the country, and so he said, "Why don't you come down and audition for Ophelia?" So I auditioned and I got cast, and I was like, to quote Seinfeld, you yada yada'd over an important part. but go ahead, I'll let you get that. I'll let you get away with that one. So you went down to Alabama.
Yeah. Okay. I shouldn't say that was an easy thing to do, because it's hard to get cast in anything, anywhere, at any time, because there's only there's millions of actors and there's only the one role, so it's anyway. So I was grateful, and I'm sure that my brother put in a good word. So that was good.
He was already a legend at Alabama Shakespeare.
He was already a legend at Alabama Shakespeare. And so, so anyway, I was very grateful to be able to go down there and be close to my hometown and to do this play with my brother in this amazing regional theater. And they were doing at that time, right when we were starting rehearsals, they had their production of A Christmas Carol up. And my brother was in it, and they were doing like this student matinee at like 10 a.m., I want to say. And my mother drove over, and we went to see it together. And while we were watching the show, there was this actor who kept showing up and popping up and playing all these different parts. And he would come on, he had a tall, top hat, and he was young Scrooge, and then he'd come on and be like basically like dragging a wooden leg or something, or like it was crazy. And I was like, who is this man? Who is this man? And I just kept turning to Mom and going, there he is again, there he is again. And I just was obsessed. So that turns out his name is Michael Emerson. And I came in to start rehearsals for Hamlet. He's sitting there in a 3-piece suit. I'm not kidding you. He's playing Guildenstern. I'm like,
he wears the suit really well.
I'm obsessed with this man. Like, who shows up in a 3-piece suit to a table read? Michael Emerson. So anyway, we start talking, and it was like instant love. And 26 years later, we're still together. We've been married 22 years.
And where were you married, by the way?
We were married in Macon, Georgia. And Jim Crust was our internet. He joined the ministry of whatever from the internet, the Church of Universal Life, and we got married. But anyway, so Alabama Shakespeare was obviously, we did this production of Hamlet. I got to work with my brother and married met the love of my life, and then just 1 year ago, I was invited back there to direct a production of a world premiere of a new play written by Susan Ferrara called Buzz, which is about a sort of a loosely based on true story about Marianne Buzz Goodbody, who in the 1970s was one of the only female directors in all of the UK, and she famously directed a production of Hamlet. So we got a full circle situation where I got to go back and do that. And it was amazing. It was such an incredible thing to be back in that building. And I staged the play in their scene shop, which was something they had never done before, as a little nod or homage to Buzz herself, who staged that famous production of Hamlet in what had been costume storage. So I was trying to honor her, and it ended up being this really spectacular experience. And just gave me goosebumps every time, just knowing my history with the place and the history of this woman that we were bringing to life.
It was great. Those of you who only know Carrie as an actor should absolutely check out the films that she's directed, and certainly if she's ever directing theater anywhere near you, you should check it out, because she's a brilliant director as well. We're going to actually, I'm going to ask you one more theater question, and then Arielle Zomer, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, I'm going to ask your question after this. Okay, so lots and lots of great theater involving you, and you can feel free to also talk about anything else that you want to, but I'm sure that people would want to hear about the Tempest with a certain Star Trek captain as your Prospero. Why don't you talk about sort of what that experience was like, and how, for a young actor, how again formative it must have been to be, speaking those words by that author in that setting opposite that actor. That's just incredible.
Yes. I've never wanted a job more than I wanted to play Miranda in The Tempest. With Patrick Stewart, directed by George C. Wolfe. I was so nervous and so overly prepared almost for that audition. I just was like, I cannot mess this up. And luckily I had played the role before, so it was already, somewhat in my, I don't know, under my skin. So yeah, to be able to get cast in that part, and then to be under the stars, in Shakespeare in the Park, which is where we did it initially, with Patrick, who had never done Shakespeare in the Park either. He was like a little kid, and we were just playing so hard all the time and laughing, and the cast was so incredible. Ingenue Ellis and Tego Bouget and Bill Irwin, and it was just this special little summer, but this was my New York debut, was doing this. I was thrilled and terrified, it was like being shot out of a cannon. And then we would come out of the show, and this was the days, where it was a pre-internet, of course. And so, you had to wait in line to get tickets. So we would come out of the show, and there would already be people camping out to get tickets for the next night. It was quite a thing. I mean, the Star Trek fan thing, that goes deep. That goes deep. Oh my gosh. And then it did so well that we moved it to Broadway, and we had a limited run. And so I made my Broadway debut doing Shakespeare, and Patrick Stewart was making his Broadway debut at the same time. So it was just incredible to think, that we were doing that together. And then we went on to do Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf at the Guthrie together. And so he and I stayed in touch. And as a matter of fact, he was very helpful when I was directing Buzz, which I was just telling you about, because he generously spent like an hour or two maybe on the phone talking to me about Buzz herself, because he knew her. He had worked with the actual Marianne Buzz Goodbody. So he had many stories about her, and it was really great, to be able to draw on that friendship like that.
Well, I can testify as to a little bit of how much Patrick Stewart loves Carrie, because about 7 years, I think I told you the story, about 7 years ago, I had an interview with him about a movie that he had done, and I walked in, and he was of course gracious, but you could tell that it was at the end of the day, he had been, I'm sure you've been in this situation where you've done.
Sure, yeah, you're tired. You're telling the same story over and over.
Only going to be 8. They all ask the same questions, whatever.
Yeah.
And I told him that you were one of my best friends, and he just lit up, and we had the greatest interview just because I walked in and dropped your name. It was the greatest.
Yay! So, I'm glad he didn't go, who? No.
Any journalists out there, if you ever have an interview with Patrick Stewart, just tell them Carrie Preston is one of your best friends, and you're very good. So I do want to jump to TV and film, because as crazy it is to think, our time is already starting to run a little bit short. And of course, I think people are going to want to know about some stuff. And I'm going to start out with an audience question, even though it's current rather than at the beginning of the career.
Sure.
Again, Arielle Zomer, I hope that I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Feel free to text in if I'm not. She wants to know if you're able to spill any tea about, that's my phrase, about what's going to happen to Polly in the last season of Claws.
Oh, yes, Arielle. Oh, there you are. Arielle is a big follower of us. She loves our show. So thanks for your support, Arielle. It's great that you're on the call today. Yeah, let's just say I think that you and the rest of the fans are going to be very happy with the way the story the story of these women gets wrapped up. I know I was thrilled with it, and the other actors were. The show starts off as just this group of these five women. They're like five fingers on a hand. And, we've seen them go through a lot during the 4 seasons, and the hand kind of spread apart. Well, you're going to see this again. And so, I think it'll be nice. I'm not saying that it's not going to be without conflict, of course. And there's going to be some surprising things that are going to happen. But it is definitely about a female friendship. And I think the show is going to keep zeroing in on that. And I'm very pleased with what's going to happen with Polly this season. You're going to meet a new persona. I've been so lucky with this job because for those of you who don't watch Claws, I play this con artist who not only does she steal people's credit cards, she also steals their personalities. So it's like an actor's dream because I get to play a bunch of different parts within the one role. And, I've had such creative freedom on this job that I'm going to miss so much. You just don't get this kind of freedom where I can just come in and say, this little thing you wrote, I'm going to turn that into a persona and do a whole completely different accent. And can I wear this or can I do that? And then they just go, sure. And they just let me do what I want to do. So you will see another very fun, crazy character come out of Polly this season.
And we've gone from the Tempest to Claws in 15 seconds. I love it. They're right next to each other in the Western canon. They're very similar.
Yeah.
Well,
it is a bit Shakespearean what happens.
It certainly has Shakespearean elements. It's certainly when you talk about range, it's definitely not to pump up the.
Yes.
I love it. Well, when we look at your transition from, I shouldn't say transition, but when you look at the expansion of your career from the stage into film and television, I think that you could have really gone far in this industry if only your first film screen role had been in a little bit higher profile movie with maybe a little bit bigger star, other than Just a Friend, of course, way back when. But your first real role here. Why don't you talk a little bit about? I'm just trying to give the people what they want, Carrie. They're gonna want to hear about My Best Friend's Wedding and all that. What you was really like and how much you got to get crazy and cut up on set with Rachel and all that kind of stuff.
God, that was just that's the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, we shot My Best Friend's Wedding, I want to say in 1996 or something. It came out in 1997, and people still love that movie. And I know because I still get residuals for it, which, at this point, you usually aren't seeing any, they aren't big or anything like that, but it just is indicative of, the fact that this movie was, a romantic comedy, screwball comedy, throwback to like those ones from the 50s, and those just kind of last. And yes, Julia Roberts, it was my first experience with like a real true star, and I'll never forget and we're both from Georgia, and we're the same age, and we're both from Georgia. And then to be around somebody who really understands the responsibility and of being a star, and what that is, and what that means to be the leader of a cast. And she was always on top of her game, always. That there was she was so on top of the material. And I'll never forget, we were doing a scene, and there were a bunch of background artists around us, maybe 10. And we were doing the scene, and it was stressful, and as all filmmaking is. And the director came over and wanted one of the background players to do something. And he said, "I'm sorry, what's your name?" And Julia's like, "That's Charlie. That's Charlie. That's Michael. That's Vanessa. And she knew all of their names. Wow. And the looks on their faces, I was like, oh, right. That's going to mean so much to them. And the fact that she took the time, because a lot of times you're so busy, like you don't have time to do that. And she had done that. So, it was great working with her, but mostly it was great working with Rachel, because Rachel Griffiths played my sister, and we were there. These are the days where they would bring you to town and they would just sit you there. So we were sitting in Chicago for 10 weeks maybe. And so we had all this time to do stuff together and experience the city, and we were rollerblading everywhere. And the amount of time and care and the budget that they had with those movies are just not there anymore. That you just don't have these big budget romantic comedies anymore. So I feel like I got to experience something that is no longer there, like the big Hollywood blockbuster, and to be a part of that and to see how something like that is made. Things have evolved so much. And we were shooting on film, of course, and PJ Hogan was the director, and he was so creative, and he would let us improv. And, it was a great way to do my first movie. And I got really spoiled. I don't think I realized at the time, the gift that I did, but looking back, it was, something that I didn't think was going to have the longevity that it does.
Yeah. Well, you certainly were in a lot of big movies that we could talk about for probably half an hour each, like The Legend of Bagger Vance, and like Transamerica, and like working with Woody Allen on Vicky Cristina Barcelona, which I'm sure we could talk about for about 12 hours in all its problematic and probably also good aspects. We don't want to get into that. The classic film Doubt. Doubt.
I mean, people should know, what this story. People should know this story, just because, it seems like, oh, okay, you do this career and you get these great, experiences, but you also do a lot of work that gets cut. Yeah. It gets completely cut. And for whatever reason, and they don't tell you why. They don't, so I had a whole story arc in that film that's on the cutting room floor, because I think when they got in there, they realized, oh, we really just need to be doing the play, because it was based on a play, and it really just needs to center around these 4 characters. We don't need this framing device, which was what my character was doing. So although I had a great experience doing it and filming it, there is a lot of heartbreak in this, in our industry, when you go to watch the final product. It goes from everything that could be possible to the definitive, and you as an actor just have to turn yourself over to that and go, okay, that was serving the greater good of that story, and I was there as an artist who was there to help facilitate that. And so you really have to check your ego at the door, which sometimes it's hard to do, because you get so invested,
Sure.
In something. You get invested in it as an artist. You get your time is invested in it. And also for your career, you're like, okay, I hope that people will see this. And there's so many things that people don't see at all. And then there are other things that you go, wow, I still have people talking to me about this thing. So you just don't know, but you do have to just keep keep showing up and trying to do good work. So Doubt was that. So you watch Doubt, and like the opening credits, I get this single card, Carrie Preston. I mean, I think I have like one line, you know, it's like, that's just the way the cookie crumbles.
I mean, I always say the biggest thing I learned editing my first movie, and you're a director, you learned this, I'm sure, before editing your first movie, you learned it in Doubt, is that I was prepared that there would be things that I thought worked in the moment when we were filming, that when I saw them on screen, they just didn't work. I was prepared for that. What I was not prepared for was that there would be things that seemed like they worked beautifully on camera, worked beautifully and were amazing on screen, but just didn't fit the movie that I was making. And it's like, no one's ever going to see how beautifully that person delivered that line.
So much good work on the cutting room floor. If only we could just, you know, make the other movie, you know, the cutting room floor movie, you know, because, you know, you can cut a million movies out of your footage, you know, and then you just have to decide, like, what story am I really telling? What's the clearest story? Like, what am I doing, you know? And usually it starts with what's on the page, but sometimes it morphs into something else, you know, that you didn't even think. So I've been on both sides of that. So,
well,
but it doesn't keep it from hurting, though. It does hurt.
Doubt.
Yeah, it doesn't keep it from hurting. Yeah.
Well, like I was saying, so many, you know, big films that you were in, so many small films that you were brilliant in. But I'm sure you saw this question coming, because you know that I think not even Scott Teems is as much an evangelist as I am about the gospel of That Evening Sun, which I think is just, there is no movie that is even close to it for me, as far as the gap between how amazingly good it is and how few serious film people have even seen it. And I'm like, you must see this movie. That Evening Sun is 2009, directed by Scott Teems. It was the only solo lead, or so far is the only solo lead of Hal Holbrook's career. Stars Hal Holbrook and Ray McKinnon and Walton Goggins and Mia Wasikowska and Barlow Jacobs and Barry Corbin, and just an embarrassingly long list of amazing actors. And of course, Carrie Preston. Tell me about playing. I'm getting tears in my eyes asking this question. Tell me about playing Ludi in That Evening Sun, because that character is so crucial to the way that story goes. And if that character is not just nailed like you nailed it, part of that whole story falls apart, you know? And so maybe what I should ask is this. Maybe I should ask, because I know Scott always tells the story about you, and because I know there are a lot of actors watching this, tell me about putting an audition on tape for that movie, and then tell me about sort of what you learned from Scott or from the other actors, from Ray, about in doing that movie.
Well, this was one of those, where you get the script, your agent sends you the script, we have an audition for you. And I read the script and I just thought, I really understand the world that this writer has created. I understand it. And I'm not saying I'm going to get the part, but I understand, what to do with what I'm going to try to do with this audition. I just know these people, and then I found out later that the director, Scott Teems, is from Georgia. And I was like, oh, duh, and I mean, he did base it on a short story, but he did take it and, put his own incredible voice on it and in it. And, actors were always auditioning on tape, and so I had my brother who was in town read with me. So I had an actual family member reading with me. So there was an ease and intimacy that sometimes I'm not able to get in an audition on tape. They're so awkward. It's so weird, but because it just fit like a glove, I just basically laid it down in one take with John and then my brother, and then just sent it off, not thinking anything of it, because it's like acting in a black hole, these tapes. And And luckily, the director watched it. Like a lot of times, I don't even know if your work gets looked at, or they're just looking for a look or whatever. And so, yeah, apparently he looked at it and was like, where did they find this non-actor? Is that what he told you or something like that?
No, I just remember him saying, "Oh my God, that's Ludi. That's Ludi."
Yeah, I think he thought I was
And
like
he
a
had seen a
non-actor.
lot of actors before then, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. And he was just like, who is this non-actor? And I think he thought I was from Georgia, or just like somebody who was never, and whatever. And the casting director was like, no, she's from Georgia, but she went to Juilliard. And he's like, what? So you listen, it doesn't always end up like this, let's just say. But luckily those things fit, that role, and Scott and Walton and Ray and everybody's, we're a bunch of Georgia people. Yeah. So we all just like head it off. But boy, does Scott have vision. I mean, he is a visionary filmmaker, and what he did with Hal was remarkable. And it's a brave movie. It's a true Southern story. I think it's a story. It's a cautionary tale about getting taken over by rage. So it's just a lot of great stuff. And my character definitely was there to sort of balance that out, to bring in, the kind of the female perspective and what is a pretty much of a male parable in a way. Yeah.
It's called That Evening Sun. And listen, I'm telling everyone in the audience right now, my email address is mdunaway@gmail.com. I want you to go and I want you to rent that movie. And if you do not love it, send me an email and I will Venmo you your rental fee back. Because it is a perfect movie and you need to see it. It's called That Evening Sun. And Carrie is just amazing in it. And you will, when you see the scene, I'm just going to say the scene by the light of the television. That's all I'm going to say. You will know exactly what it is when it comes up. And Carrie and Ray McKinnon are as good as as well acted a scene as has been done in this century, as far as I'm concerned.
He's very biased, but I appreciate it. I also have blonde hair at that. That was in my blonder days. Yeah, it was fun to see that again.
And then, of course, a couple of years ago, after so many years in the industry and working with so many great directors, you finally had a chance to work with the greatest of them all in a movie called 6 LA Love Stories. No, we're not going to talk about 6 LA Love Stories. But
that's Michael's movie.
I directed a movie called 6 LA Love Stories, and Carrie is absolutely brilliant. Won several awards at festivals for her acting in that. Yeah, she's great in it. And then let's circle back before we end here. Let's circle back and talk about some television as well. You had done a lot of parts in television, but I think was True Blood the first time that you really sort of found a home in a show television. Do you consider that you're really sinking in?
Yeah, True Blood really took my career to another place. And it was fascinating because I was doing, I did an indie called Towelhead that Alan Ball wrote and directed based on a book. And I was so thrilled because he's, again, a Georgia guy. And we hit it off in the audition. Thankfully, he thought I was good for the part. And so I got to be in this movie with him and that he directed. And while we were working, I said, "What are you doing next?" And he said, "Well, I'm doing a vampire show, pilot about vampires for HBO, and I might have something in there for you." And I was like, "A vampire show? Like, of all things, that Alan Ball would choose to do." But so I got the script and I read it, and I honestly didn't know which character he was talking about. I was like, what does he mean he has something in that? I don't know. Because it's not like the character that I was meant to play was just not like you look up on the dictionary Arlene and you find a picture of me. And so I was like, all right, well, I'll go for it and audition and see. And so I put on the fake boobs and, teased my hair up and like put on the tightest clothes I could find and, went in and did my the best I could do with what was kind of a small part in the pilot. And I was amazed that, I got to do it, because I was just thrilled to work for HBO, the great HBO, and so I knew that but at the time when we were shooting it, we did not know that it was going to be what it was, as far as like how it was going to hit, with that audience, and that it was going to blow up, because we shot the pilot, and then like I think it got picked up, and we shot like two episodes, maybe 3, and then the writer's strike happened, and we shut down for months, and there was a change of regime at HBO, so it was like the little engine that could. It really was amazing that we got to come back to it, finish the first season, and then we all went away, and then it aired. And so we weren't even together when it became this cultural phenomenon. But thank God it did, because I got to be a part of something from the very beginning that turned into this like real cultural, it was a cultural statement about, being disenfranchised. And it was also just like popcorn for adults. And it was a vampire story for adults. It wasn't for teens, and so I was grateful that I got to be there from the very beginning and got to be there on the very last day. It was incredible. Yeah. And it was during that time, while I was doing that I was moonlighting on the Good Wife.
Good. Well, that was going to be my next question. You never forget your first. Your first of what I'm sure are going to be several Emmys came with the Good Wife. Talk to us about Elsbeth and finding that character.
Well, I mean, I'm happy with just the one. I mean, it's incredible to get acknowledged, especially for, as a guest star, because there are just so many roles that you play. And again, it was what I was talking about before. It's like you do these things and you don't know who's going to like it, how it's going to work. I mean, True Blood, I had done 6 or 7 pilots before I did that one. And that's the one that got picked up and got, and hit. And yeah, so I got cast based on this movie that I had done called Duplicity, actually, with Julia Roberts. This was years after my best friend's wedding. And the creators of The Good Wife had seen me in that and thought I would be good for this part that they were creating. And they said, when they called to talk to me about it, Robert King of The Good Wife and his wife, Michelle, what Robert called and said, yeah, she's going to be kind of like a female Columbo. But I'd never really watched Columbo, so I didn't really know. So I was like looking up Columbo, and I was like, oh yeah, right, Peter Falk. Okay, got it. So I knew that she was supposed to be unorthodox in the way that she, did her business and stuff, and was the way they wrote it was a little scatterbrained. But what they let me do, I should say, is really fill in those gaps in a way that was so freeing. I did one episode at the end of their first season, and I thought it went well, and we found a little character, and then I didn't hear anything from them for a year. So I thought, oh my God, I fucked it up. I didn't do, I knew what was on the page and it was so great, and I just didn't rise to it. So I just, was so devastated. And then season 3, they called me up and said, hey, we've got like a 4-episode arc. And I was like, oh my God, now I really can't mess it up, because the writing was so good.
Yeah.
And the way that they would, what was fascinating to me mostly about that character was not so much what she was saying, but what was happening in the pause. Yeah. Because I was like, something's happening to this woman. She does not think like the rest of the people. Yeah. So what does that mean? And what does that look like? And then, it slowly started to kind of blossom into its own thing. But I've never had to map out a role as much as I do with her, because she's so quick. And I think that's why the audience likes watching her, because she's like, mercurial.
Sure. Absolutely.
And so it's really fun to play, but it takes a lot of prep going into it. Yeah.
I just want to point out there's something that's come up several, I think 3 times in this talk where you talk about how the producers really sort of let you run with something, or let you fill in gaps, or let you whatever. And I mean, I just want to point out that they're not doing that. They wouldn't do that with somebody who walked in off the street. They're doing that because they know that you do really brilliant work. And
yeah, but just as many situations I've had where there's the micromanaging, so much so that you feel completely creatively, stymied, and then like in a little box, and that's when you really have to rely on your training, to kind of get you through that. Because there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of money at stake, and so there's a lot of control, and sometimes you're the one that they feel like they need to control, and that's just part of the job. So I've had just as many restrictive experiences as I have freeing ones, but luckily, if you have a foundation that you can root yourself in, you can get through any of that.
Well, that actually leads right into my very last question for you, because actually our time is almost out. But I know there are going to be other than hometown Macon, Georgia people, which shout out to everybody from Macon. I feel like one of the biggest groups of people that are going to be watching this are going to be actors, because you are such a magnificent actor, and so I wanted to give you a chance to to give them any either big, deep pieces of advice, or any little technical, hey, when you walk in the room, wait for them to hold out your hand. Don't shake their hand unless they hold it out. Like anything from the big to the small that you just want to share with your fellow actors who are coming up behind you and are maybe not going to have the chance to ever talk to you and say, what advice do you have for me? What advice can you give them en masse here that you've learned over your 68 years in the industry?
That's 78. Okay?
I forgot about the first step.
Forget about you forgot about the radio in the 40s.
Your vaudeville days.
Radio, my vaudeville days. Oh no, I'm still having my vaudeville days, babe. I will say, the first thing that comes to mind is actually some advice that I got once from Mary McDonnell, the actress Mary McDonnell. At one point, just incredibly surreptitiously, serendipitously, I should say, not surreptitiously, serendipitously, I got in an acting class with Mary McDonnell, and she was only doing it at this very tiny little time period, and somehow it lined up that I was doing that, and it's the only acting class that I've even taken out after grad school. So I was doing this class with her, and she was amazing, and there were just only like maybe 10 people in the class, so we had this like incredible intimate time with her. And I was doing this pilot, and it was one of those situations where I was being controlled, right? And it was a 4-camera sitcom, and I'll tell you what, when you do a four-camera sitcom, I like to say it's a comedy, but it's no joke. The stakes are really, really high. So I was really nervous, and I was having a bit of a meltdown in class, because I was like, I need to go to class, and I need Mary McDonnell to help me. And so I was up to do, I don't know, a scene or something. And she always said this thing where she was like, let's start from where you are. Okay. So you would sit and you would say, I feel this, I feel that, or I'm angry or whatever. And I sat down and I was like, I feel, and I was like bawled. I just started sobbing. And she said, what's going on? And I explained to her what was happening. And she said, listen, I'm going to tell you this, and I want you to listen very carefully. You are the authority on this character. No one else is. This is a blip on what is and will continue to be a great career. So you just need to know that. And you need to go in there tomorrow grateful with a smile on your face, and you need to figure out how you can help them solve the problem of the scene. And she also said, keep yourself open to the mystery of life, even though the world is crumbling around you. And I thought, okay, as actors, we're constantly in this chaos. We're just these walking people are hitting, their nerves are just getting battered around. And our job is to keep ourselves open, even when we're getting beat up or feeling beat up, because something extraordinary might happen. And you might, even if you're replaced or you're fired or whatever, even if, keep yourself open. And so I encourage everybody, especially right now where there's no work, there's very little work. We've got this pandemic. We've got a lot of chaos happening. We've got to keep ourselves open as artists, because who's going to tell this story of now but us? So that's my advice.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So those of you who know Carrie's work, who is most people on this call, I'm sure most of America, know what a magnificent actress she is. And what you may not know, but you're seeing hints of today, is that she is even more magnificent as a person. And I've been very honored to have a front row seat to seeing both of those for a long time. I forgot to say, where can people track down your directorial masterpieces? Because we didn't even get to talk about you as a director. But where can people see what you've directed?
Well, let's see. That's What She Said, which is a movie that I directed, the feature that is a comedy. I like to call it a chick flick that's not for pussies. So you can get that on iTunes. And
amazing.
Then
by Anne Heche.
Anne Heche, yes. Anne Heche is incredible.
For that one, you can actually watch the trailer on YouTube, and you're not going to be able to resist watching the movie because it's incredible.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Carrie.
Alia Shawkat is in it as well, she was, only 21 or something when she was in it. So yeah, you can get that. I got to direct an episode of Claws, season 3, the 8th episode of the season. I'm so proud of it. It was so incredible to be able to direct episodic TV, which is something I've been doing for so long. So I did that. I directed a web series called Darwin the Series. You can see that, darwintheseries.com. Super fun, funny, great series. Yeah, so I'll toss those out. There have been more, but those are the ones I'll push.
Well, magnificent actor, magnificent person, Carrie Preston. I love you.
I love you.
The Portland Film Festival loves you. We'll see you soon.
Okay, it was so much fun.